Alright, before we get started, I want to set the rules for this ranking video. Before anyone gets upset that I didn't put their favorite cinematic masterpiece of the summer on my list, I'm only ranking the movies that I saw in theater this summer. So don't be mad when your favorite cinematic masterpiece from this summer, like Meg 2 The Trench, doesn't appear as number one. Rule number two, I'm not doing some specific summer season. I'm just doing the movies that I saw during my summer break. Here's a list of those movies that I saw that I'm about to rank. Feel free to bully me or to put your summer rankings in the comments below. And with all that being said, let's get right into the rankings. Coming in at last place is Transformers: Rise of the Beast. So yeah, this was definitely the worst movie that I saw this summer. The only reason I did not forget that I saw this movie was because I actually did a double header where I saw Across the Spider-Verse the same night right after it. So yeah, it's a pretty forgettable movie. This movie also forgets to do anything the previous Transformers movies did well. Yes, all of the Bayverse movies are pretty much objectively bad with amazing action. This movie's action is as generic as you can get. On top of that, they showed the best action scene in the trailer. It's the one where Bumblebee jumps out of the plane is like spinning around, and I think that's even better in the trailer because the song you get behind it. But that can probably be debated. Then this movie did not stay on track with Bumblebee to tell a decent story at all. Yes, Bumblebee is a pretty generic boy finds dog storyline, but that was better than what we got in the Bayverse movies and for this film as well. Rise of the Beast just inserts a basic video game plot. And on top of that, the main character literally morphs into a Power Ranger at some point in the movie, and I'm not too keen on all Transformers lore, but I don't think that happens very much, and when it does, it wasn't a super popular decision. So yeah, this is a pretty forgettable movie. The only reason I don't absolutely just hate this movie is because I did take my little cousin to see it as well, and he really enjoyed it. So at least like kids liked it, so that's a positive for it. Coming in at number nine, we have Fast X. I mean, do I really need to even come up with a reason for why this movie is so low? It's more the same stuff that we've seen from the previous installments in the Fast franchise. If you want an in-depth analysis for why this movie isn't great, there's plenty of them online, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse over here. I will say I do admire Jason Momoa for giving effort into whatever his character Dante was supposed to be. I personally felt like Dante was what happens when you have a character that's supposed to be Heath Ledger's Joker and there's no writing or actual plot behind it. Also mixed with a little bit of Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow. The cliffhanger at the end was cinema though. But yeah, there's really not too much I can go over this film. There's a lot of the same stuff. I mean, you just have big time actors in here. You have Brie Larson getting added into the mix, which I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But I was surprised to see her act in a franchise like this. So I am kind of interested to see where that's going. But yeah, overall, it's pretty generic. The CGI is just the same as it always is, and they actually don't go too over the top compared to how they did the last couple of films. So yeah, on to the next entry. Here at number 8, we have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The best way to sum up Dial of Destiny is a generic Hollywood legacy sequel. I mean, director James Mangold has two movies under his belt, which I do actually really like, and that's Logan and Ford vs. Ferrari, but Dial of Destiny feels like another cog in the machine for Disney. I thought we would get another awesome send off to a character like in Logan based off Mangold's prior work, but Indy's send off barely trickles across the finish line. In all of the Indiana Jones movies, there is somewhat of a suspension of disbelief with everything that's going on. Like just look in Raiders in the Lost Ark. I mean, someone's face literally melts off, but I mean, for time travel using mathematics as the explanation for it, that's a bit of a stretch. Also, the visuals for a $300 million movie are pretty underwhelming, and the acting overall is just mediocre at best. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this movie. I'm not a huge Indiana Jones guy overall, but yeah, it's just an average movie. On to the next. Quick bonus right here. I actually forgot to say John Williams' score is absolutely amazing in this movie, so there is a positive for this movie. So now truly on to the next ranking. At number 7, we have The Flash. And to start off, this is the first movie on the list I would give an above average rating to, and that's literally just a 6 out of 10, where my average rating is a 5 out of 10. However, that does not mean that I do not see the problems with The Flash. I could never really truly love this movie due to the fact that an absolute bozo is playing the main role, because Ezra Miller is literally a psychopath, but I did try to separate the art from the artist. The Flash has fairly cool concepts, but it never chooses to explore them in any meaningful way. One example is with Michael Keaton's Batman. It was super cool to see a concept of a Gotham that no longer needs Batman, but all we get is one dimensional hermit Batman that we saw in the first quarter of The Dark Knight Rises. We also have the Flashpoint stuff from the comics going on, but that only feels half baked, to be honest with you. Yes, I know DC is literally about to reboot, but they got Jason Momoa, Ben Affleck, and Gal Gadot to come back for this film, so why couldn't we get some crazy Elseworld action, like actually seeing the Amazons fighting the Atlanteans, Jason Momoa versus Gal Gadot? I think that would have been pretty awesome. They had pretty good chemistry in the Justice League movie as well. I also cannot stand the Dark Flash in this movie. He serves just to be convenient for the plot when the writers could not come up with a clever way to conclude the time travel slash multiverse storyline. Also, the weird versions of the Flash does not line up with how I see the Flash. I actually see the Flash with, well, what's going on in the background right now from the Justice League Unlimited show. But that's too many negatives for a movie I actually enjoy. I love the display of powers we finally see from the Flash, the phasing, the lightning, the tornadoes. All of this was like actually awesome. And I know the CGI was mediocre, but I think there's kind of a partial like reason for that, and I think it was kind of supposed to give an uncanny valley feeling when he was going back in time, but there was a lot of scenes where it just wasn't good in general, so I really don't know what was going on. And also the scene where Batman takes down the Kryptonians just like absolutely wild. That was actually truly awesome, and I see a bunch of fanboys saying, oh well, he died right after. Well, it's like the fact that Batman was just even able to fight a Kryptonian and knock him out for a split second without any preparation just goes to show why this man is like one of the top dogs when it comes to superheroes. And another thing I like about this movie is it actually understands that Superman was the only one who could have beaten Zod during that time frame when Zod comes to Earth. Zod in Man of Steel is a monster, and I mean he's literally one of my favorite comic book movie villains of all time. And I'm glad to see that this movie held up to his reputation. I feel like some weird jokes came from the director Andres Muschietti being a little out of his element. I believe he's only done horror up to this point, but yeah, so I think some of the jokes were a little bit on him. The biggest thing that I liked about The Flash is the reason for the multiversal events taking place. No Way Home is another movie you can kind of compare to it, and yes, it's a way better movie overall, and it's not even close, but breaking the multiverse because Peter Parker just wants to get into college and doesn't want people to know him anymore is kind of crazy. Like the fact that Doctor Strange was just so allowing to do that, I think is a pretty weak starting point for otherwise a really great movie. But going back to save your mom from being murdered, but also for your dad from false imprisonment is a way stronger motivation for me. And I think it actually started the movie off a little bit better than No Way Home, but of course it did not finish the same way. And we also have a bozo playing the main character. So yeah, overall it's a fairly decent movie, and I didn't hate it, and I think it was a little bit above average. On to the next installment in this ranking. Coming in at number 6, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. What a breath of fresh air this was for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. Finally, an adaptation that is goofy but takes itself serious enough to feel meaningful. The cast in this one was brilliant. I mean, I really don't have to say that. It was being posted about everywhere, and the standout for me was Rose Bryan as Leatherhead, and I was not expecting a female voice to play Leatherhead, but it was super funny in the movie, and all the turtles feel like modern day teenagers, and the underlying themes of fitting in are pretty much relatable for most people around the world. Mutant Mayhem also had this phenomenal action scene where it literally like just panned across this hallway but kept cutting from building to building where they were basically going in and being these like gang lords, and it was just super super cool. And then it had awesome music in the background to that, and although this statement isn't completely accurate, I feel like this was kind of the kids' version of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where you just really have this unique group of individuals coming together and learning that you can be family with anyone, and that anyone, like, just if they are who they are, will eventually find people that love them for who they are. So, yeah, I mean, this was a good movie, and on to the next ranking. Coming in hot on our rankings is at number 5, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and I should have said this starting with Mutant Mayhem, but every movie above The Flash on this list I really really like. I truly felt like this was a pretty good summer movie season, and like many of Cruise's movies, he loves the action to feel cinematic, and I mean basically with Top Gun Maverick he brought back cinema in my opinion. I mean, not that there wasn't cinematic stuff going on in movie theaters, but he really made the effort to just have his movie only be in theaters and not put it on a streaming platform. But that's enough about Top Gun Maverick. We're here to talk about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Yeah, the action in this is awesome. Ethan Hunt riding the motorcycle off the mountain was truly special to see in theaters. However, the rest of the action seems like pretty generic stuff in the Mission Impossible franchise. You have good hand-to-hand fight scenes, you have running away scenes, you have the car chase scenes. I mean, all of that in any spy franchises. But out of all the spy franchises, Mission Impossible happens to be my favorite. Director Christopher McQuarrie has made phenomenal trio of Mission Impossible movies up to this point, and Haley Atwell's addition to the franchise was more than delightful. I mean, I've always liked her since she played Peggy Carter in the Captain America movies, and yeah, so it's hard for me to give a full opinion on this movie though so far because it really does feel like a part one to a two-part thing. And I mean, the villain in the movie Gabriel felt like a generic video game villain at times. I mean, there's a scene where Liddy he's on top of the bridge and he's just like waiting around looking, and it just looks like when the NPC in a video game, you like are the main character and you walk by and then he turns around and is about to fight you and then you run away real quick and then he just starts walking around in a circle again. I mean that happened a couple of times, but I mean that might not be fair. But I think the main villain of the story was supposed to be the AI. The entity seems like a realistic problem for AI, where something like Terminator: Age of Ultron still feels very science fiction for now, at least. And I still like Fallout due to Henry Cavill's exquisite performance as the bad guy, but Dead Reckoning can have second place in this franchise for me, and it's another great entry in the franchise. So on to the next. Coming in at number four, I have The Sound of Freedom, and this could be the most controversial spotting that I have on this list with it being at number four, but I do think this film deserves that. The Sound of Freedom is a phenomenal movie that I hope I never have to watch again. It reminds me of the Schindler's List and the fact that the source material of the movie is really, really difficult to watch, but I think it's a necessary evil to go through and look at. And the majority of this movie makes me really, really anxious while feeling really guilty for not doing anything about the issues that are going on in the movie with child trafficking. And this is completely the point of The Sound of Freedom. This movie is difficult for me to rank, but I think the message of the film delivers is super important. Like I said, I mean, child trafficking is going on around us, and I know some people have claimed that this movie is like overstating how much of it goes on and maybe didn't deliver it as the best that it could have been done. But to me, I think it was actually portrayed pretty well. And I went into this film expecting a B movie, and I was definitely wrong. Although this movie isn't what I would consider cinema, I do think there's better acting in The Sound of Freedom than we get in most modern day movies. The child acting is good here as well. The actor that played Teddy did a really good job, and also the little girl did a phenomenal job as well. Yes, this movie has some mixed reviews, but I believe The Sound of Freedom talks about human trafficking in a real world way, unlike over stylized films like Taken and The Collective. I've seen where some attorneys have claimed that this movie isn't 100% accurate either, but I didn't go to the movies to watch the news. I definitely didn't want to go watch actual child trafficking. Like, that would just be terrible, so I don't really know what they wanted to see from this film. And yeah, so I mean, I think The Sound of Freedom found the right happy medium of delivering the message of human trafficking and the issue and raising awareness for it. And I mean, there's some truly hateable characters in this film. I mean, at the very beginning, the pedophile that you have that takes the pictures of Teddy online and is like selling him off is just despicable. And then at the very end, the guy that has the little girl is just a terrible human being, and you completely love the fact that he does get murdered. And that's just something that I think the film does extremely well, is because like those aren't easy topics and they're super sensitive, but you actually like, with a film with this much terribleness going on, you can still find hope in the world. So with all that being said, on to the next one. We've now made it into the top three of my favorite movies from the summer, and here at number three, we have James Gunn's farewell to the MCU, and it was pretty much perfect. Disney should be really concerned right now. We're truly considering that their only two truly successful post-Infinity Saga productions have been a Sony film and a James Gunn film. They sent James Gunn to their competitors over at DC and Warner Brothers, so I'm more excited for any of DC and Warner Brothers' future projects than anything Marvel has to offer right now. This movie has so many great things, it's pretty crazy. From being a metaphor about creative liberties among directors to a love story between a raccoon and an otter is just pretty insane to just be in one movie and say that it did those things well. Everyone was on their A game here. Batista, Pratt, Zeldana, Poulter, Gillen, Cooper, Fillion, Clementif, and even Vin Diesel does well. And at this point, I'm pretty confident that I can say Vin Diesel is one of my favorite voice actors of all time. Just literally playing Groot in the Iron Giant, I think those two are pretty legendary, and I definitely would consider him one of my favorites. Gunn has always been a breath of fresh air in the MCU. Let's all just be honest here. But Guardians of the Galaxy 3 closes so many unique characters, storylines in such a brilliant way. The easy way in filmmaking to end a character story is just by killing them off, and Gunn finds a way to avoid that with all of his characters. Sure, I know some people are like, oh, well, there's no stakes. Well, yeah, you could just kill any of them off in any of the movies, and that would be a really easy way to end it. I mean, sure, it can be done well, especially when you look at in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when Yondu dies, but to allow all the Guardians to survive with their stories feeling conclusive within the trilogy is phenomenal. And yes, I know Gamora technically died in Infinity War, but I still feel like Gunn found a creative way to keep her story going, even though his own character got killed off in a movie that he didn't create. The music is great, like always. I mean, the acoustic version of Creep at the beginning of the movie when Adam Warlock comes is just it could be the most fitting song for the Guardians ever, and the hallway fight scene with No Sleep Till Brooklyn is just gorgeous. I mean, that's easily a top 10 action scene in the MCU just by far. The single take in the pan through the hallway is just artistry. The jokes in this movie genuinely made me laugh out loud, which is that rarely happens in movies. I'm not too much of a comedy guy, but I mean, in this one and pretty much all the Guardians films, I do find myself laughing a lot. The Guardians movies have always brought a sense of belonging, even when there's to be none found, and acceptance in some form or another is a universal feeling all humans wish to have. I mean, Rocket finally realizing he's fully accepted in this movie is just, it's really nice to see. Rocket's backstory that runs parallel to the story is also really, really emotional, and the audience finally learns why he was so willing to push everyone away in the first two films, like when he was with Yondu and telling him that he just likes to be alone, and Yondu tells him, no, I know you, and you kind of see what he was talking about now in the first film when he's, talking about like he's just a monster and everyone was calling him a monster and he doesn't feel accepted. To me, it's just crazy that a movie about a fictional raccoon understands basic human nature better than most movies. Oh, and the High Evolutionary was also a very hateable villain, which in my opinion made him great. Today, a lot of the movie villains, they just try to make them sympathetic, which can work, but like I think you forget that sometimes collectively a movie audience likes to have someone they can all just hate. And with all those things in the movie, I mean, there's really not too much to complain about. And overall, I think this was a perfect conclusion to this franchise. So let's get to the top two. Here's another one that I might get a lot of flack for, but I'm going to go with my number two favorite movie of the summer as Across the Spider-Verse, and let's just say this is a masterpiece. This and The Last Entry on the list are at truly cinema. This easily could be number one on my list, but I cannot place it there yet. I just mean there are a lot of story threads that could be made worse by Beyond the Spider-Verse, which I definitely doubt, but there's always the chance. Also, the second part of this movie might not ever come out, so if that happens, then this could be shifted to number one since it would be a complete movie, but there's the part two, and that's kind of, I think that's fair in my ranking because I did the same thing with Mission Impossible. Also, I'm very biased towards Spider-Man, so I always was going to love this one. With all my defense for why this isn't number one out of the way, let's just talk about the brilliance of Spider-Verse. This is generally one of the smartest films I've ever seen in so many different ways. This movie is just pure genius. The opening scene with Peter Parker being a lizard is just a great twist, but it also shows how the team behind Across the Spider-Verse and probably Into the Spider-Verse understand their source material. A lesser film would have made Peter die in a similar way to Gwen, but the writers know Peter Parker is a genius. He would be smart enough throughout the multiverse to develop a lizard formula. The beginning of this movie also spoils the entire movie, but nearly no one recognizes this, and it's when Gwen is playing the drums, which is just crazy that they can do that and get away with it. I mean, that's pure brilliance. And when Gwen tells Miles, in every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, and in every other universe, it doesn't end well. It's just top-notch writing. I mean, using the words falls is brilliant. As most fans know, things don't usually end well for Gwen, like Gwen says, because she literally falls to her death. The line seems so simple, but it has so much meaning. I mean, just using the word falls, like I think probably put it into perspective for most of you guys. We know what happens to Gwen when she actually falls, but I mean, I'm gushing over this movie right now. It is truly brilliant. This movie pays so much attention to its continuity as well. I rewatched Across the Spider-Verse recently and noticed so many setups and payoffs in this film. I mean, Miles' day pass that he gets in the middle of the movie is actually taken off by Spider-Man 2099 in the chase scene when he's departing. And I mean, this just sets up so much like drama that will happen later when he's sent back to the original Spider's universe. And then Spider-Verse seems to understand Spider-Man on a fundamental level very well. I mean, Spider-Man, no matter the interpretation, tries to do the right thing, but this movie does something completely new. This movie writes a scenario where the right thing is not black and white. Is Miguel right in the sense of sacrificing a few lives for many, or is Miles right in for trying to save those who are so-called destined to die or destined to fail or destined to be evil? I mean, it's a great scenario to put Spider-Man in, and it's a genuine moral dilemma represented in a kid's film. On top of that, Miles' friends learn he, according to Miguel, is the reason for the moral dilemma. I mean, this was truly heartbreaking, and I mean, they don't even decide to tell him. And then, but the fact that he has the optimism to fix everything, no matter what, even being told this, I mean, he truly is one of the great Spider-Mans. Another standout of the movie is the Spot. I mean, we have a zealous villain here shining. I mean, the zebra-looking dude feels way more threatening to the multiverse than the MCU's King does. So, I mean, well done to the writers here for the Spot. Several other characters still to show as well. Miles' parents feel like real life parents. Like I mean, they genuinely feel like people that I would go over to my friend's house and that's what their parents would be. I mean, Miles' dad telling him, I mean, I guess Spider-Man, he thinks he has parenting all figured out, only for him to say, then they all go and grow up, is just truly impactful and true. I watched this film with my dad, and he said the exact same thing after. Another standout character is Hobie. He's one of the coolest side characters I've seen in film, just in general. And then every second he is on screen, he's doing something important. He's been impactful. He just stains an everlasting impact on your memory. Haley Steinfeld is once again a standout as Gwen, and then the animation. I mean, like, do I even have to talk about it? Both Spider Verse movies are legitimate art. Like, that's not just like saying, oh yeah, like they technically are art. I mean, how can you watch this film and miss that? Finally, we have the soundtrack, and although this isn't as good as the first soundtrack of Into the Spider Verse, I still think the music here is phenomenal. Miguel and the Spot's themes are great, and Self Love is one of my favorite songs right now, and Annihilation is also pretty good. Let's just hope that Beyond the Spider Verse can be just as amazing as Into and Across. And without that being said, you guys might be able to guess what's at number one, but we'll go into the number one spot. The best movie. And I mean, Cillian Murphy should win Best Actor for this performance. Let's just be honest. His eyes and facial expressions during the film could be studied for actors on their own. I mean, I forgot Oppenheimer was a movie during the scene when Kitty, played by Emily Blunt, tells Oppenheimer he cannot play the sinner and the victim at the same. His point of view of him just believing things are black and white and being simple or not simple. I mean, it's just I think it's pretty evident that Nolan did this on purpose. I mean, for example, I mean he only sees there's two outcomes to what happened with the discussion between Oppenheimer and Einstein that he witnesses, and he basically just comes to the outcome that they must have been talking about him, and it must have been no one was going to tell the truth for him. It was truly awesome in my opinion, and this was one of the stories I truly had no idea where Oppenheimer's story would go, so I was invested in the Senate debate. I also think Nolan crafted an Oppenheimer that deserved what he got in the end. I mean, he's definitely a flawed character, and you can't truly say that he's completely good. And so, at the end of the day, I think what he got, where he didn't get completely punished, but he did lose his permission to not be seen as a threat entirely, it was full and deserved. And I think that just shows, the craftsmanship of Nolan and really why this is the best movie of the summer. So, I mean, that was my ranking, everyone, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Until next time.